Hello world, welcome to Champions Online Commentary. Something I've been thinking about for a while is the lack of direction and purpose the game gives players. It's something that needs to be worked on throughout the entire game, but I'm going to start with the tutorial since that's pretty much where it starts. Currently, when you create a new character, you start by picking your powers, then you go into the character creator. Now for new players that have never played before, they have this weird version of a streamlined creator where they don't have all the costume options, and then those costume options magically show up at level 10 or after a few hours or whatever it is. They're never told about this, there's no indication unless someone tells them. They don't know. They have no idea that this streamlined creator even exists. Instead, my idea is that you start by selecting your character's look. Now there are going to be two choices. A true streamline creator, which has a bunch of pre-made costume templates, so you could just pick a costume and go ahead. You don't have the full tailor experience at all. It doesn't even show up. You don't see the tailor, you just see these pre-made costume templates. You can select one and just keep going. Good for new players. True streamline creator. In fact, maybe this could be the replacement of the streamline new players get. Honestly, I don't think that should be the case. They should have the streamlined or the full character creator, which is just a normal tailor. Those are the two options. Once you're done creating your character's look, then you can either go through the tutorial or skip it. It's not going to be called a tutorial. Your options are going to be to answer the distress beacon or completely ignore it. If you choose to ignore this distress beacon, you get the option to select between having a freeform or one of the archetypes that you own. After that, you're dumped into the powerhouse. Pretty much like skipping the tutorial is now. The biggest difference is if you choose to go freeform, you're not picking your powers at this time. You pick them once you're dumped into the powerhouse. You don't actually have any powers at all when you're there. You have to talk to the trainer first. If you choose to answer the distress call, you then select a basic powers theme for your character. Yes, even if you intend to be a freeform later. Too bad. This is designed for the new player experience, and that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Essentially, you will be going through the Qularr crisis with a custom archetype specifically for the crisis. Maybe that sounds like a lot of work, but it is to help with immersion. Defender is asking for heroes, and it's implied that these heroes are established, that they know what they're doing, that they're capable of defending the city from an alien invasion. That's a big deal. I mean, you really think some level 1 guy that just hopped off the superhero training school bus is going to know how to really handle himself in this scary alien invasion? I mean, bad things are happening. You want someone that knows what they're doing. That's kind of implied in the distress call. So it should be reflected in the tutorial. You are level 40, you are fully geared, and you have more than, 1 power and a crappy energy builder. And you have full super stat selection, a travel power, full tree setup. It's not going to be anything fancy, probably going to be 5 powers. One of them is going to be your energy builder, one of them is going to be a slotted passive. Nothing fancy, no block replacers, no energy unlocks, no active defenses, no active offenses. Those are kind of more involved than what you need to give a new player. That's right, travel powers are now a thing. Sapphire and Kinetic are using travel powers. Players with grav boots are flying around. There is no travel power suppression, it doesn't make sense, and that can go away. Considering that these archetypes only exist for the crisis, you are pretty much free to use any travel power. You can add having a cash shop or Q store travel power is not a bad idea. Introduces players to, hey, there are other travel powers. They get to see these travel powers before they buy them and use them and play with them, and maybe they'll even buy them. Nice, cool way to add some theme to these archetypes, really make them feel like they're part of the superhero world, that right from the get-go, you're a powerful established hero. That's pretty cool, right? There are some considerations though. I mean, you can't really teach block to an established hero. It doesn't make sense. It seems kind of dumb and insulting. It's like, well, I'm level 40. I should know how to do that. Mechanics-wise, of course, the new player wouldn't know that. And I have a way, and I will talk about later, to introduce new players to these mechanics that aren't taught at all, like throwing, or aren't taught very well, like blocking. Something I should make clear is that these custom archetypes for the crisis cannot be changed. All of the things are pre-selected. They cannot be changed. You can't change your gear. You can't change your stats. You can't change the trees. It's just something for the new players to feel powerful, but it is also fully decked out powerful. Not like completely gimpy, but not as powerful as you would be with a full hero. It's kind of like a Training Wheels 40. The very first thing I'm going to do is rip out all of the idiot boxes. There's no reason that there should be any pop-up boxes anywhere in the tutorial. It does not make sense. You're playing a game, you're an established hero, and now you need to read the fine manual. What? No. Goodbye. Goodbye, idiot boxes. Most people are going to figure out how to move and jump, even if they're rolling their face across the keyboard to do it. The next thing is, the very first mission, it doesn't make sense, and I would like to see it changed. What we have now is this cop waves you over and says, hey, go talk to, the crime computer lady. That's basically the first mission, and it doesn't really make sense. I know it's a way to introduce new players to the crime computer, but you're an established hero, you should already know it exists. Mechanics-wise, of course you don't, and I have a way to address that later. The first mission should be the cop waves you over and says, here's this flamethrower, go torch those nasty eggs so that we don't have a whole bunch more alien babies running around eating people. 1, that's a lot more fun. 2, the flamethrower device already exists in the game. I mean, seriously, how is torching eggs not fun? The biggest thing missing from the Qularr crisis is the actual crisis. There's not a whole lot going on. There's no real sense of danger. There's not panicking civilians. There's not a lot of battles going on in the background. Police barricades are pretty anemic. There's no fighting. I mean, you have 1 or 2 Qularr coming up and they're getting shot with your pistol and they're dying. That's about it. That's pretty lame. Why would there even be a distress call sent out if the cops could just do this with their normal weapons? They could clean house. And why do you need a hero there? What would be really cool to see is fights at the barricades. Have lore heroes based in Millennium City created to fight Qularr at the barricades, protecting the civilians inside. That would be really neat. Feeling like a hero, there's other heroes around you that are doing important things. You are being the one tasked with going behind the enemy lines and trying to disrupt what's going on and to help the champions get rid of this mothership that's hanging out, popping out Qularr babies everywhere. And speaking of civilians that need to be saved, what is up with that chick in the blue that's standing there like a complete idiot, waving her hands around? Really? Why are you saving her? She's complete dumbass. And then when you talk to her, she suicide rushes into the next Qularr. What? No, that's terrible. What would be really neat, since it's an optional side quest anyway, is she could be surrounded by Qularr and you swoop in and save her life. That would feel heroic. It would be immersive. Hey, I just saved this woman's life doing, something I needed to do anyway. And then she should follow you. Not run ahead like an idiot and get herself killed. Follow you. There's a follow script in the game. You can follow other players. She should be following you. It makes sense. I mean, if you want to give her, some rocks to throw and when you're at the enemies, or she could just cower like she does now, but she should be following you when she does it. Not running off ahead like an idiot. Once you get to Champion's headquarters, there's going to be some differences here. First of all, Defender is not going to be telling you to block. There's going to be no block callouts. There's going to be nothing mentioned blocking. There's going to be no idiot box telling you to block. None of that. It's just not there. Which also means the attack that would have taken off a huge chunk of health that you should have blocked isn't going to happen. It's going to assume the player does not know how to block. If you do know how to block, that's cool. But a brand new player, they haven't been taught this mechanic yet, so it shouldn't be required at all. The big thing is that Defender is going to go take care of the beacons. He is more familiar with Champion's headquarters. He probably has better technology to get rid of these beacons or deactivate them or whatever. You, however, you're going to be the distraction that Defender needs to go and do his thing. You're going to be the one fighting Black Talon by yourself. You're going to be the one fighting some ads. I mean, you are essentially level 40, so the fight can be much more involved. Should be interesting. The one thing is, though, Black Talon should not be killable because of the scripting of this fight. Which, obviously, as a new player, you're not going to know, but just get rid of the health bar. You don't need to see that. It could be the one fight in the game where you don't have a health bar on the boss. But once Defender is done taking care of the beacons, and he's about to go in the room with the Ironclad Defense console, this is when Black Talon should take a nasty shot at Defender that you are going to take. That's right, you're going to save Defender's life by taking a critical hit so that Defender can go and get rid of the Qularr mothership with the ironclad defense. Since you've taken this really nasty shot, at this point, some of the other heroes should show up. You know, someone like Sapphire, who doesn't do anything anyway. They can show up, and Black Talon can be like, oh, hey, too many people here, I've got to go. So while you're like laying there, going unconscious because you've just been critically injured, Black Talon gets away. This gives you a goal. You want to go back and have revenge or take care of Black Talon. He's the guy that got away. He critically injured you. You're pretty much laying there unconscious. This means that the final cutscene is also going to have to change. Some of it can stay the same. Some of it's going to have to be different. Obviously, you're going to have to be removed from the cutscene. Your character model is just not going to show up. And everything after the with your help part, first of all, that part needs to be cut. The rest of the dialogue is fine and can stay that way. After that, that all should be cut. That talking about the world crisis, none of that's going to apply. And frankly, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, the Qularr invasion couldn't have been more than a few days. Why is all this weird crap happening around the world? And where are the rest of the heroes around the world? Why aren't they taking care of this? You are going to be recovering. So in the end, it's going to be a scene with the EMTs taking you and probably some other heroes out and going to Mercy Hospital. This is where I extend the tutorial. During the invasion, you were seriously injured. You've been healing for a long time. Now you're ready to be released in a light duty capacity. But before you do that, you need to go through a refresher course. This training can be inside Champion's headquarters or the Powerhouse. And the Powerhouse is the better choice since that's where you're sent once you skip the tutorial anyway. You're assigned an instructor to walk you through everything. The first thing she's going to ask you is what powers you have, and this is where you select your archetype or your starting powers as a freeform. The first thing the instructor will guide you through is the block training. It's simply a simulated boss fight against any of the nasties that have powerful charge attacks. You're not going to be told how to block yet. The expected response is to fail, which the instructor will then go over blocking with you and talk about the cues that most of the bosses have in the game. The graphic that appears above their head and next to their portrait. Then you go and pass the second time. You can, of course, pass the first time for anyone who does know how to block or just figured it out on their own. And the instructor will accordingly say how pleased they are that you've recovered so well and exceeded expectations in this area. Once the block training is done, the instructor then moves you on to something new, which isn't covered in the game right now, and that is throwing objects. Yes, it's very easy to figure this out. You can just walk up to a trash can in game, be curious about the interaction option, and then be, hey, I can throw this trash can at someone. That's pretty cool. But what I'm thinking of is a way to introduce it to be a more tactical option. It's not in there at all. It would be nice to have. There are places where knowing how to throw an object as a melee character is beneficial when you want to pull just certain mobs and not certain others. But for the training, it's a simulated infiltration of whatever villain base, and anything would be fine. The important part is that there is a door that has a semi-visible barrier on it. It's something that looks like you could walk through, but you're not entirely sure. The expected response would be to try to walk through the door and then just get knocked on your ass. This is the part where the instructor gives you a hint on how to proceed, explaining you cannot walk through this type of doorway, but she's going to draw your attention through the door on the other side of this barrier to a breaker box or a button or something that you could maybe throw something at so that you could proceed and deactivate the barrier. Of course, there will be some boxes or objects you could throw scattered about the area before the doorway. And it will be possible to pass the first time by just picking up and throwing something through the doorway at the breaker box or switch or whatever. Either way, you are introduced to throwing things as a tactical option, and it would be nice to see throughout the rest of the game, as well as having a buff to the damage throwing objects does. It should be based on your strength. If you're throwing a semi-truck, it should feel like you're throwing a semi-truck at enemies and do a lot of damage. I mean, what's the point of having 300 strength, being able to throw all these big heavy objects and they don't do a whole lot of damage? Doesn't make sense. It would be a nice little buff, not necessarily comparable to a ranged attack, but something that does feel powerful. The final key element of the extended tutorial is teaching players about the crime computer. Right now, it's a hot mess, and that would absolutely need to be upgraded first. There's a forum thread talking about the major changes desperately needed for the crime computer. I'll link that in the description so you can go read, add some your own thoughts to it. For the tutorial purposes, the instructor will send you to Socrates, who will talk about things that happened while you were healing. There's been an upgrade to the crime computer, talking about putting in your information back into the system. Maybe the Qularr hacked it while the invasion was going on, something like that. The important part is you're being introduced to the crime computer. You now have access to it. You have the credentials to get in, and you can access it any time you want to find something to do. Gameplay-wise, it's very easy to get off track, especially with alerts, and there really needs to be a way to get back on track, or at least find something to do that isn't an alert. Maybe you want to do missions. Well, what missions are you supposed to do? You have no idea. Unless you've been playing for a while, you're not going to know where to go. Crime Computer right now is just a little tiny button on the minimap. It's easy to ignore. There's 10 other buttons there. It's not obvious that you should be clicking on it to find out this information. I would say have it on the alert bar. Have a nice little graphic with Socrates' face on it, appealing, something to look at. You can click at any time. It's always there to remind you that when you're lost, you can click on it. Now that you've completed this refresher course, you're free to leave and start heroic duties again. The only downside is that you're still seriously injured and you're recovering, so you're essentially on light duty. It now makes sense to go into West Side. You don't want to start with really hard villains when you're recovering. You want to kind of ease yourself back into it, and this could be suggested by like the instructor or Socrates or whoever. Why don't you start in West Side? It'll help you get back on your feet quicker. And then it gives you a secondary goal, getting back to full power or even becoming more powerful so you can have that rematch with Black Talon. There's kind of like two goals here that have the same end. You want to be reminded from time to time that Black Talon, you want to go after him again, have him show up, or maybe send minions after you every once in a while just to be that reminder. Not to say that there shouldn't be other goals, but these are good starting ones to have that can keep players hooked into the game. I know what you're saying, but Sturga, my character's a villain. Well, no one cares. This is about heroes. That is how all of the lore in the game ends up. No one is stopping you from living out your villainous fantasies in game. However, it is about heroes, and the story should reflect that. You can choose to ignore it. I'm sure most people never read the quest text at all in any MMO, and this one is hardly going to be an exception. That wraps up my thoughts on how to make the tutorial a much more exciting and heroic experience and introducing new people to this superhero world. Thank you for listening to my long rambling daydreams on things I'd like to see in the game.
Over here. We don't have much time. Black Talon is our adversary. He's a servant of Dr. Destroyer. And if we don't bring him down quickly, he'll lay waste to all Millennium City. Block! Block! I'll hold off the reinforcements. You're going to have to defeat Black Talon on your own. You've shown great bravery today, my friend. We need to shut down all those beacons. They broadcast a high-frequency signal which drives the Qularr crazy. That's what caused them to attack. This door leads to the defense control room.